Hi, I will be doing a clean read of Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. It's mostly for archiving purposes because I am going to try to volunteer to read out loud to children. So I'm trying to do my best to have a feel of full on reading because it's mostly going to be in English and Bisaya. But I want to try and get better at it. Actually, I got this book really recently because I've always wanted to read the full because unfortunately for me, I kind of wait to read the full book until I get it actually on hand. This is a really cool cloth bound one, and it's low-key like those tests where you see a butterfly or do you see a moth type. I really like these types of book covers because I judge books by their cover, and a lot of the times I buy books based on how good the cover is. That's what I did for my Cthulhu collection book as well. um I really wanna keep doing more stuff like this because I really want to try to volunteer because most of the time they would try to do Bisaya archives for books for children, and I want to have that disposition and that comfort to reading stuff like this out loud. So without all the yapping, this is Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, translated by Michael Hoffman from Penguin Classics. Thank you, Penguin Classics. You've been my goat since way back. I'm not cutting that out. I am not cutting this shit out. Metamorphosis. When Franz. Bleh. Fuck. Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. When Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from troubled dreams, he found himself changed into a monstrous. Bleh. When Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from troubled dreams, he found himself changed into a monstrous cockroach in his bed. He lay on his stuffed, armored back and, raising his head a little, managed to see a sectioned off. Fuck, man. When Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from troubled dreams, he found himself changed into a monstrous cockroach in his bed. He lay on his tough, armored back and, raising his head a little, managed to see, sectioned off by little crescent-shaped ridges in two segments, the expanse of his arched brown belly, atop which the coverlet perched, forever on the point of slipping off entirely. His numerous legs, pathetically frail by contrast to the rest of him, waved feebly before his eyes. What's the matter with me? He thought. It was no dream. There, quietly between the four familiar walls. I'm gonna redo that. I'm gonna read it. This is so hard. I don't read out loud ever. When Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from troubled dreams, he found himself changed into a monstrous cockroach in his bed. He lay on his tough, armored back and, raising his head a little, managed to see, sectioned off by little crescent-shaped ridges into segments, the expanse of his arched round belly, atop which the coverlet perched, forever on the point of slipping off entirely. His numerous legs, pathetically frail by contrast to the rest of him, waved feebly before his eyes. What's the matter with me? He thought. It was no dream. There, quietly between the four familiar walls, was his room, a normal human room, if always a little on the small side. Over the table, on which an array of cloth samples was spread out, Samsa was a traveling salesman. Hung the picture he had only recently clipped from a magazine and set in an attractive gilt frame. It was a picture of a lady in a fur hat and stole, sitting bolt upright, holding in the direction of the onlooker a heavy fur muff into which he had thrust the whole of her forearm. From there, Gregor's gaze directed itself towards the window, and the drab weather outside. Raindrops could be heard plinking against the thin window ledges, which made him quite melancholy. What if I went back to sleep for a while and forget about all this nonsense? He thought. But that proved quite impossible, because he was accustomed to sleeping on his right side, and his present state he was unable to find that position. However vigorously he flung himself to his right, he kept rocking onto his back. He must have tried it 100 times, closing his eyes so as not to have to watch his wriggling legs, and only stopped when he felt a slight ache in his side, which he didn't recall having felt before. Oh my lord, he thought. If only I didn't have to follow such an exhausting profession. On the road, day in, day out. The work is so much more strenuous than I would be in head office. And then there's the additional ordeal of traveling, worrying about train connections, the irregular, the bad meals, new people all the time, no continuity, no affection. Devil take it! He felt a light itch at the top of his belly. Stood a little closer to the bedpost, so as to be able to raise his head a little more effectively. Found the itchy place, which was covered with a sprinkling of the white dots of significance, of which he was able to interpret assay the place with one of his legs, but hurriedly withdrew it, because the touch caused him to shudder involuntarily. He slid back to his previous position. All this getting up early, he thought, is bound to take its effect. Man needs proper bed rest. There are some other traveling salesmen I could mention who live like harem women. Sometimes, for instance, when I return to the pension in the course of the morning, to make a note of the what? To make a note of that morning's orders. So, okay, sometimes some of the words are like cut off. That's kind of like, I need to watch out for those. Some of these gents are just sitting down to breakfast. I'd like to see what happened if I try that out with my director sometime. It would be the order of the boot, just like that. That said, it might just be the thing for me. If I didn't have to exercise restraint for the sake of my parents, then I would have quit a long time ago. I would have gotten up to the director and told him exactly what I thought of him. He would have fallen off his desk in surprise. That's a peculiar way he has of sitting anyway, up on his desk, talking down to his staff from on high, making them step up to him very close because of hard of making them step up to him very close because he's so hard of hearing. Well, I haven't been I haven't quite given up hope. Once I've got the money together to pay back from what my parents owe him, it may take me another 5 or 6 years. Then I'll do it, no question. Then we'll have the parting of ways. For the time being, I'd better look sharp, because my train leaves at 5. You know what? This is a very valid crash out. And he looked across at the alarm clock ticking away on the bedside table. Great Heavenly Father! He thought. It was 6:30. Oh God! And the clock hands were moving smoothly forward. In fact, it was after 6:30. It was more like 7:15. Had the alarm not gone off, he could see from the bed it had been quite correctly set for 4 o'clock. It must have gone off, but how was it possible to sleep calming through the stringing, which caused even the furniture to shake? Well, his sleep hadn't exactly been calm, but maybe it had been all the more profound. What to do now? The next train left at 7. To catch it meant hurrying like a madman, and his samples weren't packed yet, and he himself didn't feel exactly agile or rigorous. And even if he had caught that train, he would still get a carpenting from the director, because the office boy would be on the platform at 5 o'clock and would certainly have reported long since that Gregor hadn't been on the train. That boy was a real piece of work, so utterly beholden to the director without any backbone or nose. Then, what if he called in sick? That would be rather embarrassing and a little suspicious too, because in the past, because in the course of the past 5 years, Cracker hadn't once been ill. The rector was bound to retaliate by calling in the company doctor, would upbraid the parents for their idle son, refute all objections by referring to the doctor for whom there have only been perfectly healthy but work-shy patients. And who could say he was wrong in this instance anyway? Aside from the continuing feeling of sleepiness that was quite unreasonable after such a long sleep, Gregor felt perfectly well. Even felt the stirrings of a healthy appetite. He was hurriedly thinking this, still no nearer to getting out of bed. The alarm clock was just striking a quarter to 7. There was a cautious knock on the door behind him. "Gregor!" came the call. It was his mother. "It's a quarter to 7. Shouldn't you ought to be gone by now?" The mild voice. Gregor was dismayed when he heard his own in response. It was still within a doubt his own voice from before, but with a little admixture of an irrepressible squeaking that left the words only briefly recognizable at the first instance of their sounding, only to set about them afterwards so destructively that one couldn't be at all once sure what had been heard. Gregor had wanted to offer a full explanation of everything, but in these circumstances kept himself to, "Alright, thank you, mother, I'm getting up." The wooden door must have muted the change in Gregor's voice, because his mother seemed content with his reply and shuffled away. The brief exchange had alerted other members of the family to the surprising fact that Gregor was still at home, and already there was his father, knocking on the door on the side of the room, feebly, with his fist. "Gregor! Gregor!" he shouted. "What's the matter?" After a little while he came again in a lower octave. "Gregor! Gregor!" On the door on the side of the room, meanwhile, he heard his sister lamenting softly. "Oh, Gregor? Are you not well? Can I bring you something?" To both sides equally, Gregor replied, "Just coming," and tried by careful enunciation and long pauses between the words to take any unusual quality from his voice. His father soon returned to his breakfast, but his sister whispered, "Gregor, please, will you open the door?" Gregor entertained no thought of doing so. Instead, he gave silent thanks to the he gave silent thanks to he gave silent thoughts for the precaution picked up on his travels of locking every door at night, even at home. Wait, hydration break. Sorry. His immediate intention was to get up calmly and leisurely, get dressed, and, above all, to have breakfast before deciding what to do next, because he was quite convinced he wouldn't arrive at any sensible conclusions as long as he remained in bed. There were many times, he remembered, when he had laid in bed with a sense of some dim pain somewhere in his body, perhaps from lying awkwardly, which then turned out as he got up to be mere imagining, and he looked forward to his present fanciful state gradually falling from him. He had not the least doubt that the altercation in his voice was just the first sign of a head cold, always an occupational malady with traveling salesmen. Casting off the blanket proved to be straightforward indeed. All he needed to do was inflate himself a little, and it fell off by itself. But further tasks were more problematical, not least because of his great breadth. He would have needed arms and hands with which to get up, instead of which all he had were these numerous little legs, forever in varied movement, and evidently not under his control. If he wanted to bend one of them, then it was certain that that was the one he was never fully extended, and once he finally accepted, uh, and once he finally succeeded in performing whatever task he had set himself with that leg, then all its neglected fellows would be in turmoil of painful agitation. Whatever I do, I mustn't loaf in bed, Cracker said to himself. At first, he thought he would get out of bed bottom half first, but his bottom half of himself, which he had not yet seen, and as to whose specifications he was perfectly ignorant of, turned out to be not very maneuverable. Progress was slow, and when at last, almost in fury, he pushed down with all his strength, he misjudged the direction and collided with the lower bedpost. Ow! The burning pain he had felt, teaching himself that this lower end of himself might well be, for the moment, the most sensitive to pain. He therefore tried to lever his top half out of bed first, and cautiously turned his head towards the ledge of the bed. This was easily done, and in fact, in spite of its breadth and bulk, the rest of his body slowly followed the direction of the head. But, now craning his neck in empty space well away from the bed, he was afraid to move any further. Because if he were to fall in that position, it would take a miracle if he didn't injure his head. And he mustn't lose conscience at any price. It was better than to stay in bed. But as he sighed and lay there at the end of his endeavors, and once again beheld his legs struggling, if anything, harder than before, and saw no possibility of bringing any order or calm to on their randomness, he told himself once more that he couldn't possibly stay in bed, and that the most sensible solution was to try anything that offered even the smallest chance of getting free of his bed. Excuse me. At the same time, he didn't forget to remind himself periodically that clarity and calm were better than counsels of despair. That's true. At such moments, he leveled his gaze as sharply as possible at the window. But, unfortunately, there was little solace or encouragement to be drawn from the sight of the morning fog, which was thick enough to obscure even the opposite side of the street. 7 o'clock already, he said to himself as his alarm clock struck another quarter. 7 o'clock already and still such dense fog. And he lay there for a while longer, panting gently, as though perhaps expecting that the silence would restore the natural order of things. But then he said to himself, by 7:15, I must certainly have gotten out of bed completely. In any case, someone will have come from work by then to ask after me, because the business opens before 7 o'clock. So he sat up about rhythmically, rocking his body clear of the bed. Where am I? Wait, oops. Clear of the bed. If he dropped out of bed in that way, then he would have tried to raise his head sharply at the moment, so that it remained uninjured. His back seemed to be tough, and the fall upon the carpet would surely not do any harm. What most concerned him was the prospect of the loud crash he would surely cause, which would presumably provoke anxiety, if not consternation, behind all the doors. But that was a risk he had to take. As Gregor was already half clear of the bed, this latest method would more... As Gregor was already half clear of the bed, this latest method felt more like play than serious exertion, requiring him only to rock himself from side to side. He thought He thought how simple everything would be if he had some help. Two strong people. He thought of his father and the servant girl would easily suffice. They needed only to push their arms under his carved back, pull him out of bed, bend down under his weight, and then just pay attention while they flipped him over onto the floor, where his legs would hopefully come into their own. This is so funny. But then, even if the doors hadn't been locked, could he have been really contemplated calling for help? Aww. Even as his even in his extremity, he couldn't repress a smile at the thought. He had already reached the point where his rocking was almost enough to send him off balance, and he would soon have to make up his mind once and for all what he was going to do, because it was 7:10 when the doorbell rang. Must be someone from work, he said to himself and went almost rigid, while his little legs, if anything, increased their agitation. That's so funny to think about. Just imagine a little bug in bed just wee. Ah, poor guy, man. For a moment there was silence. They won't open the door, Gregor said to himself from within some mad hope. But then, of course, as always, the servant girl walked with firm stride to the door and opened it. Fuck. I should not do that when I'm like reading aloud to children. Holy shit, I'm sorry. Oh, I said it again. Oh. Gregor needed only to hear the first word from the visitor to know if it was the chief clerk in person. Why was only Gregor condemned to work for a company where the smallest lapse was greeted with the gravest suspicion? Were all the employees within expectations were all the bleh, were all the employees without exception scoundrels? Were there really no loyal and dependable individuals among them who, if only a couple of morning hours were not exploited for work, were driven so demanded by pangs of conscience that they were unable to get out of bed? Was it really not enough to send a trainee to inquire, if inquiries were necessary at all, thereby demonstrating that the whole blameless family that in the investigation of Gregor's delinquency could only be entrusted to the seniority and trained intelligence of a chief clerk? And more an account of the excitement that came over Gregor with these reflections than as a result of any proper decision on his part. He powerfully swung himself out of bed. That's funny. Oh my god, man. There was a loud impact, though not a crash as such. The fall was somewhat muffled by the carpet. Moreover, his back was suppler than Gregor had expected. And therefore, the result was a dull thump that did not draw such immediate attention to itself. Only he had been a little careless of his head and had bumped it. Oh no! Frantic with rage and pain, he turned and rubbed it against the carpet. Ugh, that sucks. Something's fallen down in there, said the chief clerk on the hallway on the left. Gregor tried to imagine whether the chief clerk had never experienced something similar to what had happened to himself today. Surely it was within the bounds of possibility. But, as if in blunt reply to this question, the chief clerk now took a few decisive steps next door, his patent leather boots creaking. From the room on the right, his sister now whispered to Gregor, "Gregor, the chief clerk's here." "I know," Gregor replied to himself, but he didn't dare say it sufficiently loudly for his sister to hear him. "Gregor," his father now said from the left-hand room, "the chief clerk has come and wants to know why you weren't on the The chief clerk has come and wants to know why you weren't on the early train. We don't know what to tell him. He wants a word with you too. So, kindly open the door. I'm sure he'll turn a blind eye to the untidiness in your room." "Good morning, Mr. Samsa," called the cheery voice of the chief clerk. "He's not feeling well," Gregor's mother interjected to the chief clerk, while his father was still talking by the door. "He's not feeling well, believe me, chief clerk. How otherwise could Gregor miss his train? You know that boy has nothing but work in his head. It almost worries me that he never goes out on his evening offs. He's been in the city now for the past week, but he's spent every evening at home. He stays at the table quietly reading the newspaper or studying the railway timetable. His only hobby is a little occasional woodwork. In the past 2 or 3 evenings, he's carved a little picture frame. I think you'll be surprised by his workmanship. He's got it up on the wall in his room. You'll see it the instant Gregor opens the door. You've no idea how happy I am to see you, chief clerk. By ourselves, we would never have been able to induce Gregor to open the door. He's so obstinate, and I'm sure he's not feeling well, even though he told us he was fine. I'm just coming, Gregor said slowly and deliberately, not stirring, so as not to miss a single word of the conversation outside. I'm sure you're right, madam, said the chief clerk. I only hope it's nothing serious. Though, again, I have to say that, unhappily or otherwise, we business people often find ourselves in the position of having to set aside some minor ailment in the greater interest of our work. So can we admit the chief clerk now? Asked his impatient father, knocking on the door again. No, said Gregor. In the left-hand room, there was only an awkward silence, while on the right, his sister began to sob. Why didn't his sister go and join the others? She'd presumably only just got up and hadn't started getting dressed yet. Then why was she crying? Because he wouldn't get out of bed and admit the chief clerk? Because he was in danger of losing his job? And because the director would then pursue his parents with the old claims? Surely those anxieties were still premature at this age. Oh dear, Gregor was still there, and wasn't thinking at all about leaving the family. For now, he was sprawled on the carpet, and no one who was aware of his condition would have. Bleh. For now, he was sprawled on the carpet, and no one who was aware of his condition could have seriously expected that he would allow the chief clerk into his room. This minor breach of courtesy, for which he could easily find an explanation later, hardly constituted reason enough for Gregor to be sent packing. Gregor thought it was much more sensible for them to leave him alone for now, rather than bother him with tears and appeals. It was just in the uncertainty that afflicted the others and accounted for their behavior. Mr. Samsa, the chief clerk now called out loudly. What's the matter? You've barricaded yourself into your room. You give us one-word answers. You caused your parents grave and needless anxiety. This just by the by. You're neglecting your official duties in such a quite unconscionable way. I'm talking to you on behalf of your parents and the director. And now, I ask you in all seriousness for a prompt and full explanation. I must say, I'm astonished. I had taken you for a quiet and sensible individual, but you seem set on indulging a bizarre array of moods. This morning, the director suggested a possible reason for your missing your train. It was to do with the authority to collect payments recently entrusted to you, but I practically gave him my word of honor that couldn't be the case. Now, though in viewing with your baffling obstinacy, I'm losing all inclination to speak up on your behalf, and your position is hardly the most secure. I'd originally come with the intent of telling you as much in confidence, but as you seem to see fit to waste your time, I really don't know why your parents should get to hear about it as well. Your performances of late have been extremely unsatisfactory. It admittedly not the best time of year for the best results. We freely concede that. But the time of the year for no sales, that doesn't exist in our calendars, Mr. Samsa, and it mustn't exist. But Chief Clerk, Gregor explained in his excitement, forgetting everything else. "I'll let you win right away. A light indisposition, a fit of giddiness, have prevented me from getting up. I'm still laying in bed, but I feel almost restored. I'm now even getting out of bed. Just one moment's patience. It seems I'm not as much as improved as I'd hoped, but I feel better just the same. How is it something like this can befall a person? Only last night I felt fine. My parents can confirm this with you. Or rather, last night I had a little inkling already of what lay ahead. It probably shown in my appearance somewhere. Why did I not think to inform work? It's just that one always seems and imagines that one will get over an illness without ever having to take time off. Chief Clerk, sir, spare my parents. All those complaints you bring against me, they're all of them groundless. It's the first I've heard of any of them. Perhaps you hadn't yet perused the last batch of orders I sent in. By the way, I meant to set out on the 8 o'clock train. A couple of hours work has done me good. A couple, the couple of hours rest have done me the world of good, Chief Clerk. Don't detain yourself any longer. I'll be at work myself presently. Kindly be so good as to let them know and pass my regards on to the director. That was that was quite hard. My nose is getting stuffy. Sorry. While Gregor blurted all of that out, almost unaware of what he was saying, he had moved fairly effortlessly. No doubt aided by the practice he had in bed, up to the bedside table, and now attempted to haul himself into an upright position against it. He truly had it in mind to open the door, to show himself and to speak to the chief clerk, but he was eager to learn what the others, who were all clamoring for him, would say once they got to see him. If they were shocked, then Gregor would have no more responsibility and could relax. Whereas if they took it calmly, he couldn't have any cause for agitation either. And if he heard, he might still get to the station by 8 o'clock. To begin with, he could get no purchase on the smooth bedside table, and at last he gave himself one more swing. This poor guy, man. And he stood there upright. He barely noticed the pain in his lower belly, though it did burn badly. Then he let himself drop against the back of a nearby chair, whose edges he clasped with some of his legs. That's funny. With that, he had attained mastery over himself and was silent because now he could listen to the chief clerk. "Do you understand a single word of that?" The chief clerk asked Gregor's parents. "You don't suppose he's pulling our legs, do you?" "In the name of God!" his mother cried, her voice already choked with tears. "Perhaps he's gravely ill and we're tormenting him. Greta! Greta!" she called out. "Mother?" His sister called back from the opposite side. They were communicating with one another through Gregor's room. "Go to the doctor right away. Gregor's ill. Hurry and fetch the doctor. Were you able to hear him just now?" "That was the voice of an animal," said the chief clerk, shrieking much more quietly than his mother and screaming. "Anna! Anna!" His father shouted through the hallway in the direction of the kitchen and clapped his hands. "Get the locksmith right away!" And already 2 girls in rustling skirts were hurrying through the hallway. However, had his sister managed to dress so quickly and not through the front door? There was the bang of it closing either, or probably they had just left it open, as perhaps as times when a great misfortune had taken place. Meanwhile, Gregor had become much calmer. It appeared his voice was no longer comprehensible, though in his own hearing they seemed clear enough, clearer than before, perhaps because his ear had become attuned to the sound. but the family already had a sense of him of all that but the family already had a sense of all not being well with him and were ready to come to his assistance. The clarity and resolve with which the first instruction had been issued did him good. He felt himself back through the he felt himself back within the human ambit, and from both parties, doctor and locksmith, without treating them really in any way as distinct from the other, he hoped for magnificent and surprising feats. In order to strengthen his voice for yeah, in order to strengthen his voice for the decisive conversation that surely lay ahead, he cleared his throat a few times. Me? As quietly as possible. Oh no, not me. As it appeared that even the sound was something other than a human cough. Oh my god, me! And he no longer trusted himself to tell the difference. Next door, things had become very quiet. Perhaps his parents were sitting at the table holding. Wait. Perhaps his parents were sitting at the table holding whispered consultations with the chief clerk, or perhaps they were all pressing their ears to the door and listening. Gregory slowly pushed himself across to the door with a chair. There, let go of it and dropped against the floor, holding himself in an upright position against it. The pads on his little legs secreted some sort of sticky substance, and there rested a moment from his excretions. Ugh! And then he himself, and then he saw himself with his mouth to turn the key in the lock. Unfortunately, it appeared that he had no teeth as such. What was he going to grip the key with? But luckily, his jaws were very strong and powerful. With their help, he got the key to move, and he then stopped to consider that he was certainly damaging himself in some way. As a brown liquid came out of his mouth, ran over the key and dribbled onto the floor. Ew! Listen, the chief clerk was saying next door. He's turning the key. This was a great encouragement for Gregor, but they all of them should have called out to him. His father and mother too. Go, Gregor! They should have shouted. Keep at it! Work at the lock! And with the idea they were all following his efforts with tense concentration, he bit fast onto the key with all the strength he possessed, to the point where he was ready to black out. The more the key moved in the door, the more he danced around the lock. Now he was holding himself upright with just his mouth, and depending on the position, he either hung from the key or was pressing against it with the full weight of his body. Oh my god! The light click of the snapping lock brought Gregor round, as from the spell of unconsciousness. Sighing with relief, he said to himself, "Well, I didn't need the locksmith after all." And he rested his head on the door handle to open the door fully. As he had to open the door in this way, it was already fairly ajar while he himself was still out of sight. He first had to twist round one half of the door, and very cautiously at that, it wasn't to fall onto his back just at the point of making his entry into the room. He was still taken up with a difficult maneuver and didn't have time to think about anything else when he heard the chief clerk emit a sharp "Oh!" It actually sounded like the rushing wind. And then he saw himself as well, standing nearest to the door, his hand pressed against him in his open mouth and slowly retreating, as if being pushed back by an invisible but irresistible force. Gregor's mother, in spite of the chief clerk's arrival, she was standing there with her hair loose, though now it was standing up stiffly in the air. First looked at his father with folded hands, and then took 2 steps toward Gregor and collapsed in the middle of her skirt, spreading around against her. Her face irretrievably sunk against her bosom. His father clenched his fist in a pugnacious expression, then looked uncertainly round the living room, covered his eyes with his hands, and cried, his mighty chest shaking with sobs. Now, Gregor didn't even set foot in the room, but leaned against the inside of the fixed half of the door so that only half his body could be seen, and the head with which he was peering across at the others caught on a little aside. It was much brighter now, a little section of the endless grey-black frontage of the building opposite. It was a hospital, could clearly be seen with its rhythmically recurring windows. It was still raining, but now only in single large drops, individually fashioned and flung to the ground. The breakfast things were out on the table in profusion, because for his father, breakfast was the most important meal of the day, which he liked to draw out for hours over the perusal of several newspapers. Just opposite on the facing wall was a photograph of Gregor from his period in the military, as a lieutenant, his hands on his sabre, smiling confidently, the posture and uniform demanding respect. The door to the hallway was open, and as the front door was open too, one could see out to the landing and the top of the flight of stairs down. Now, said Gregor, in the knowledge that he was the only one present to have maintained his equanimity, I'm just going to get dressed, pack up my samples, and then I'll set off. Do you want me to set? You do you want me to? Do you want to let me set out? Do you? You see, chief clerk. You see, I'm not stubborn. I like my work. The travel is arduous, but I can't live without it. Where are you off to, chief clerk? To work? Is that right? Will you accurately report everything you've seen here? Is it possible to be momentarily unfit for work, but that is precisely the time to remind myself of one's former achievements and to reflect that once the present obstacle has been surmounted, one's future work will be all the more diligent and focused? As you know all too well, I am under a very great obligation to the director. In addition, I have responsibilities for my parents and my sister, and I am in a jam, but I will work my way out of it. Only don't make it any harder for me than it is already. Give me your backing at head office. I know the traveling salesman is not held in the highest regard there, but people imagine he earns a packet and has had a nice life on top of it. There and similar assumptions remain unexamined. But you, chief clerk, you have a great understanding of the circumstances than the rest of the staff. You even, if I may say this to you in confidence, have an understanding superior to that of the director himself, who, as an entrepreneur, is perhaps too easily swayed against an employee. You are also very well aware that the traveling salesman, spending as he does the best part of the year away from head office, may all too easily fall victim to tittle tattle, to mischance, and to baseless allegations against which he had no way of defending himself. Mostly even does not get to hear of, and when he returns exhausted from his travels, it is to find himself confronted directly by practical consequences of which causes he is arrogant. Chief clerk, don't leave without showing me by a word or two of your own that you at least partly agree with me. But the chief clerk had turned his back on Gregor the moment he had begun speaking, and only stared back at him with mouth agape over his trembling shoulder. All the while Gregor was speaking, he wasn't still for a moment, but without taking his eyes off Gregor, moved towards the door, but terribly gradually, as though in breach of some secret injunction not to leave the room. Already he was in the hallway, and, to judge by the sudden movement of which he snatched his foot back out of the living room for the last minute, One might have supposed he had burned his soul. Once in the hallway, he extended his right hand fervently in the direction of the stairs, as though some supernatural salvation there awaited him. Okay, this is page 21. There's a total of 140 pages or so here. Made big progress, I'd say, pretty good. I don't wanna, I wanna see how much I've improved by like 20 pages in. Just taking my time really, cause like I know right now I'm fumbling over words, clearing my throat, like not really having much good disposition to actually do this like properly. So I'm gonna cut off that one for now and wait for myself to get better, maybe having more free time and probably continue this. I'm not uploading this anywhere, but I do wanna archive this. So if ever you see this things, I don't know why. I'm mostly talking to like have a feel of doing talks with the children, like right after reading sections of books. I want to keep having reactions on like while I'm reading because I feel like that's a lot more engaging. I feel like that provides the readers with like more context and more of an emotional communal like experience of it all because like I don't want to just read it. I want to make them feel like I'm reading it with them and that they are part of the conversation too. So how I react and how they react would be something of like a point of discussion later. Like me finding it funny and absurd that there's just a giant fucking cockroach in bed trying to get out by like doing a fucking type shit. It's so funny. And I hope people find it funny too. Anyway, I feel like I'm yapping too much.